Welcome to Asia Weeks, New York's continuing series of webinars on exciting topics and events of current interest to our membership and viewers in our extensive fields of interest. I'm Dessa Goddard, a member of Asia Week New York Planning Committee and former chairman of Asia Week New York. Today, in collaboration with the Cleveland Museum of Art, we present From a Land of Pestilential Vapors to Paradise on Earth, featuring guest speaker Dr. Clarissa Von Spee, the James and Donna Reed Curator of Chinese Art and interim Curator of Islamic Art, Chair of Asian Art at the renowned Cleveland Museum of Art. Dr. Von Spee will discuss her monumental and awe-inspiring exhibition currently on view at the museum through January 7th, 2024. This landmark exhibition has been shortlisted for the Apollo Awards Best Exhibition of 2023, the only exhibition of East Asian art on a list of 6 that includes the Rijksmuseum Vermeer and the Metropolitan Museum of Art's The Tudors. I've made 2 trips to see this exhibition and attended the symposium associated with it. It's a spectacular exhibition, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see such rare paintings and objects joined together to present this important topic. This is the first exhibition in the West to focus on the artistic production and cultural impact of the Jiangnan region, which is located on the coastal area south of the Yangzi River. Dr. Von Spee will explore how this region gained a leading role in China's artistic production and how it succeeded in setting cultural standards which endured through successive dynastic changes. It presents works of art from 40 different public and private collections and museums in the United States, Europe, China, and Japan. Jiangnan has, through large parts of its history, been one of the wealthiest, most populous, and most fertile lands, an area of rich agriculture, extensive trade, and influential artistic production. Art from the Jiangnan region, home to such great cities as Hangzhou, Suzhou, and Nanjing, as well as the hilly landscapes interspersed with rivers and lakes, has defined the image of a traditional China for the world. This exhibition brings into brilliant focus the major role this region and its people played in the social, cultural, and economic heritage of China throughout its pre-dynastic and dynastic history. Dr. Clarissa Von Spee brings more than a decade of museum experience to the Cleveland Museum of Art, one of the most internationally renowned museums of art. From 2008 to 2016, Dr. Von Spee has served as curator of Chinese and Central Asian collections, the Department of Asia at the British Museum in London. There, she organized exhibitions including The Printed Image in China from the 8th to the 21st Centuries in 2010, Modern Chinese Ink Paintings, 2012, and produced publications for both. Dr. Von Spee received her PhD from Heidelberg University, having also studied in Taipei, Shanghai, and Paris. In 2013, she became a fellow of the China Center of Visual Studies at the China Academy of Art in Hangzhou, China. Previously, she was assistant professor at the Institute for East Asian History, Heidelberg University, and curator of the Museum for Ausgestaltete Kunst in Cologne. In 2016, she was awarded a Leverhulme Research Fellowship to conduct research on the art of the Jiangnan region of China. Her publications include her thesis on Wu Hufan, a 20th century connoisseur in Shanghai, Gems of Chinese Painting, A Voyage Along the Yangtze, The Perfect Brush, Chinese Paintings 1300 to 1900. She was co-editor of Modern Chinese Paintings and Europe, New Perceptions, Artists' Encounters, and Caiguochang, Cuyahoga River Lightning, 2019. In 2019 at Cleveland, she curated the Caiguochang exhibition, followed by China Through the Magnifying Glass, Masterpieces in Miniature and Detail in 2022. Her presentation will be followed by a Q&A. The audience is encouraged to submit questions in the Q&A for Dr. Von Spee. Welcome, Clarissa, and the floor is yours.
Good evening from Cleveland. Thank you for your kind introduction, Dessa. I would like to thank the whole team, in particular Mark Lazen, Dessa Goddard, Margaret Tao, and Alice Tang for their support and the invitation to use the Asia Week New York platform to give this talk tonight. It is with great pleasure to introduce to you the current Cleveland Museum of Art exhibition, China's Southern Paradise, Treasures from the Lower Yangzi Delta. With over 240 objects and 40 lenders, this is the largest China-related exhibition in the history of the museum. We have partnered with 7 Chinese institutions as well as with 2 museums in Japan, all of which contributed loans to the exhibition. This is the first time an exhibition in the West focuses on the artistic production and cultural impact of this region, which is also called Jiangnan. That literally means south of the Yangtze River. Today, I want to start by giving you some orientation where this region is, why it is the subject of an exhibition, and of course, I also want to introduce you to some highlights in the show. Let's start by looking at a map. Next slide, please. China is watered by 2 large, can we have the next slide? Yeah, right, 2 large river systems, here marked red, the Yellow River in the north and the Yangtze River in the south. The Yangtze is Asia's longest river. Jiangnan, south of the Yangtze River, is located in southeast of China in the area around Shanghai. May I have the next map, please? The core of that region stretches from Shanghai on the east coast westwards along the Yangtze River to the Lu Mountains in Jiangxi province and covers an area almost as large as the state of Ohio. Now, in the exhibition, we are focusing on the core cultural area, which is a red-lined area on the map. That's the focus of the exhibition. The Yangtze Delta is water-rich, and the traditional means of transportation were by boat. The region is also called the fish and rice bowl of China. The Lower Yangtze Delta has, throughout large parts of its history, been one of the wealthiest, most populous and fertile lands. The region was advantaged by its fertile soil and mild climate and its proximity to the sea, which facilitated export and trade. In addition, the region is home to many important historic cities, such as Suzhou, Hangzhou, Nanjing, Yangzhou, Shaoxing, and Wuxi. Its wealth allowed the consumption of luxury goods and art collecting, and or in turn, consequently, attracted artists and craftsmen who competed with each other for clients and for excellency. Originally, in the 4th century BCE, this region was considered wilderness. Its humid climate bred disease, and officials dismissed from court were exiled to this region. In the 2nd century, the historian Sima Qian still called it a land of pestilential vapors. However, those who were exiled to this region found consolation in its natural beauty and wrote poems and songs about it, which gradually turned the south into a region of nostalgia and longing. There is another reason why the region began to flourish and became so influential. Historically, China was repeatedly invaded by northern steppe people, which is the reason why the Great Wall was built, initiated by the first emperor. Whenever the north was invaded and occupied by northern steppe people, the court, the officials, and craftsmen in other parts of the population would flee across the Yangtze River, and most of them would settle in the Lower Yangtze Delta. This happened in the 4th, the 12th, the 14th, and the 17th centuries. Each time, these waves of migrants gave the Jiangnan region a boost in population. This increase in population stimulated the economy, and a flourishing economy generates wealth. Wealth stimulates a desire for luxury goods and consumption, which eventually resulted in the production of art. The exhibition evolves chronologically around these historic movements and is structured in 6 thematic themes. May I have the next slide, please? We will skip this. This is just to show you that the exhibition is structured in 6 sections. One strong component in the show is landscape painting, which became a primary subject matter during the Song Dynasty and allows the visitor to observe how the region transformed in time. For example, in landscape painting from the 12th to the 16th centuries, we can see how the vast wetlands of the 12th century gradually transform. And what I show you here is the 12th century paintings, Dream Journey from the Tokyo National Museum, and a painting, Cloudy Mountains by Mio Ren in the Cleveland Museum. By the 16th century, the next slide, please. By the 16th century, the Yangtze Delta plains had been transformed into densely cultivated rice paddy fields. We see an increase in infrastructure and settlements, all reflected in landscape paintings. So let me take you now through the sections and point out some highlights. Next slide, please. Section 1, Jade, Rice, Silk, Gems of Neolithic Culture, presents the earliest domesticated rice in the world, excavated from the Lower Yangzi Delta. This is evidence that in the 3rd millennium BCE, the Hemudu culture in Hangzhou Bay, already cultivated rice. Depictions of silkworms on pottery also tell us that the silkworm was domesticated and silk produced as early as the 3rd millennium BCE. Next slide, please. Most importantly, the Liangzhu culture in this area produced the most sophisticated jades ever in Neolithic times. These ritual jades, the bi-disc and the cong that you see here, suggest a complex structured society and a high level of craftsmanship. Next slide, please. The link between the section 1 and 2 is this bronze bull, excavated from Yangzhou. The typically southern silver inlay and design, which you see it's a dark pattern, which is tarnished silver on the surface of the bull. This design indicates that it continues the southern tradition of metalwork from the state of Chu. We see these patterns first in textiles and on lacquer made in the state of Chu, a state that occupied the area that we call later Jiangnan, after it defeated the states of Wu and Yue. So this oil lamp, bronze oil lamp, had the lamp was found in the lantern. You see the shades, the openwork shades could be moved to direct the light, and the soot and smoke of this lamp was channeled through the pipe into the body of the bull that was half filled with water and absorbed the polluting parts of the oil lamp, and therefore kept the environment clean. Next slide, please. The next section, 2, Poetry, Calligraphy, and Painting, deals with the formation of the 3 high arts and introduces 3 historic figures associated with the formation of poetry, calligraphy, and painting. These figures, Tao Yanming, Gu Kaizhi, and Wang Xizhi, lived in the 3rd to 6th centuries and were active in Shaoxing and Nanjing the seat of the court. In 317, the capital had shifted from north to south due to the invasion of the Tuobawei people. And 30 years later, in the year 353, Wang Xizhi invited 42 friends to a party at the Spring Purification Festival in Shaoxing. Next slide, please. His friends were seated along a stream and wine cups were floated on the water. Whenever a cup stopped near one of these scholars, they had to empty the cup and they had to write a poem. At the end of the day, everybody was drunk. The poems got better and better with each cup of wine, and Wang Xizhi collected the poems and wrote his famous preface that became known as the preface to the Orchid Pavilion Gathering. In the 8th century, this calligraphy was declared the foremost model for all writers. It was canonized and is still copied to this day. The original is lost, but copies survived. In the exhibition, the next slide, please, we have a letter fragment by Wang Xizhi, the so-called Qingrangjie, which is perhaps the closest we can come to know how his calligraphy may have looked like. The two lines here in the center represent his script style. And we are fortunate that the Princeton University Art Museum lent us this rare treasure. Section 3, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, Section 3, Paradise on Earth, Jiangnan Scenic Beauty, Agriculture, and the Arts, is perhaps the largest section that spans the 12th and 13th century. Again, after the northern invasion of the Georgian Jin this time, the capital moved from Kaifang across the Yangtze to Hangzhou at the West Lake. Here is a painting by Mi Youren that was painted in 1130, just after he had escaped the invasion of the Georgian, who occupied the north of China, henceforth. Mi Youren writes on his painting that he had made it across the Yangtze River and paints his painting in Xinjiang, which is Zhejiang province, to thank his host who gave him shelter. This landscape reflects a new environment he is exposed to. It is a typical Jiangnan riverscape with soft rolling mountains, shrouded in mist, covered in lush vegetation, and along a stretch of water. Next slide, please. By the 12th century, Jiangnan had become the country's center of silk production. And I show you here a southern Song robe for a young woman from the China National Silk Museum, dated to the 12th century. Excavated from a tomb in Jiangxi with dozens of other textiles, it reflects a typical garment for a young woman with a yellow collar and yellow cuffs. And you can see how it was worn on the right in the little image from the Shanghai Museum, in a painting from the Shanghai Museum, a contemporary one. And it also shows the first evidence of a button. The button is between the two, holds the collars together. I fear you have to come to Cleveland to see the button. Here, and then can we have the next slide, please? Here is an example of exquisite silverware that was used to serve cold beverages and perhaps fruit and sweets. And on the right, we see an incense burner made of southern Qingbai ware that imitates metalware. Both objects were made in the south and reflects a high standard of living culture in the Lower Yangzi Delta. The silver set is decorated with motifs of the southern flora and fauna, bamboo, insects, and butterflies, much unlike earlier Tang Dynasty Central Asian influenced examples. And the craftsmen here were inspired by the local flora and fauna. The cover of the incense burner on the right can be lifted with the mandarin duck. The lotus flower would hold a vessel for fragrant woods and herbs, and the fragrant perfume or smoke would have emanated through 2 holes on both sides of the cover. One hole you can see here on the picture, and through the bird's beak. While Qingbai ware kilns were not strictly or are not strictly situated in the core area of Jiangnan, we can nevertheless say that a majority of the kilns consumers and clients were situated in the Jiangnan area. And we know this from finds in tombs in this area. And as such, they were influenced, the Jiangnan clients influenced the kiln's output and production. Next slide, please. The 12th century is also the time when the statement, "In heaven is paradise, on earth are Hangzhou and Suzhou, 上有天堂, 下有俗行." This was a statement or a saying coined by the official Fan Changda, who was a poet and official from Suzhou. And you may know that this statement is remembered to this day. And those who have visited Suzhou or Hangzhou today, I'm sure, have heard tourist guides reiterating this statement. So what I show you here is the only painting that's not in the exhibition. It's the West Lake, a view from the West Lake, of the West Lake from the Shanghai Museum. So we have finally traveled in time from a land of exile and pestilential vapors to an agricultural wonderland and earthly paradise. Let's move on to the next section called Cities, Gardens, Farmland, River Shores, Literati Culture, and Urban and Rural Life. This section introduces painting and garden culture of the 16th and 17th centuries during the Ming and Qing dynasties. In the 15th and 16th century, population rises and cities grow. And here I show you a typical view of a water town city, and here is a map from the British Library. On the left, you have a rubbing of the city of Suzhou, dated to a stele from 1229. And this is a 13th century city map, of Tianping, Suzhou, and you see its rectangular outline. It's defined by its moats and the city walls, and inside a wide grid of canals, of waterways. So Suzhou is a city of over 300 bridges, often called the Venice of the East. And interestingly, if you look to the right, the satellite image shows us, if you look closely, the outline of the old city of Suzhou. Of course, Suzhou today has grown far beyond the moat and the old city wall, but you can still see this on the rectangular outline on the satellite image. Next slide, please. This painting here from the Nanjing Museum depicts a typical early morning boat traffic jam when the city gates in Suzhou open. So what we see is a Changmen Gate, and boats move in and out of the water gate in both directions. And it looks not much unlike a Monday morning traffic jam in New York. But this here is a boat traffic jam. Next, so this is a phenomenon. This section also introduces the increase in population and the kind of modern phenomena of dense city life. In view of crowded, busy, and densely populated cities, gentry families built private gardens in which these prized stones were placed that you see here on the image. Those perforated, weathered limestones were sourced from the Lake Tai area and admired for their sculptural qualities, for their weather texture and perforations that are evidence for the transformational forces of nature. Today, Taihu stones are found all over the country, but the best ones were originally sourced from the Yangzi Delta. And the fashion started under the Emperor Song Huizong. The Cleveland Museum stone that you see here on the image and which is in the exhibition is a gift of the contemporary artist Liu Dan, who helped the museum to find the stone in Wuxi. And he shipped it to the Cleveland Museum during the pandemic and made it a gift to the museum. Next slide, please. During the Ming Dynasty, mobility, outings, tourism, and travel increased and became popular, which is reflected in topographical Ming Dynasty topographical paintings, such as these 18 views of Wuxing around Lake Tai in the Cleveland Museum collection. These album leaves here that you see on display reflect the popularity of travel and are also expressions of local pride and of the identification of the artists and literati, the clients, with these and local scholars with these local historic places. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, here is single view I showed you before, how you see that the plains, the wetland plains are transformed into densely cultivated rice paddy fields. Next slide, please. This pride in place and identification with the South or with Jiangnan is also seen in group portraits of local peers, such as these scholars from the Jiangnan region, on loan from the Shanghai Museum. On the left side, you see the famous Dong Qichang. And the next painting, next slide, please, shows 5 fellows from Suzhou, 5 Ming officials who all served in Beijing at the same time and gathered to have a portrait taken. You see here 3 of them. And if you show the next slide, you will see the 4th and the 5th. And these officials, all from Suzhou, were active in Beijing as officials and had their portrait taken together. And there are 5 scrolls extant, I believe, and we were fortunate to be able to borrow from the Shanghai Museum this scroll. The next slide, please. The Ming Dynasty ends due to rebellions caused by floods, droughts, and power struggles at court. The Manchu, northern Georgian steppe people, used the weakness of the state to invade the country and eventually established the Qing dynasty, China's last dynasty. Throughout the first decades of the Qing, the Jiangnan region remains a center of resistance against the new foreign government. And this loyalism to the fallen Ming dynasty we find expressed in this striking portrait of Xiang Shengmo, which you see on the left, who depicts himself in a red Jiangnan landscape. Red is synonymous with the pronunciation of the Ming dynasty, whose family name was Zhu. Xiang Shengmo must have been prompted to paint this it's dated to 1644, probably just after having received the shocking news that the last Ming emperor committed suicide and that the Manchus had taken Beijing. Now, at this time, the Jiangnan region was not yet occupied by the Manchus, so a year later in 1645, they also took the south of China. And by that time, it would have been quite risky to make such an outspoken statement of Ming loyalism as this painting shows. Before presenting the next section 5, let's move to the next section, section number 6, which is a chronological follow-up. Number 5 is the Ming Dynasty craftsmanship. Next slide, please. This section is on imperial patronage and Jiangnan exchange. Here we have a portrait of the Manchu Emperor Kangxi, under whom the resistance among the Jiangnan people ceased, or the resistance in general in the whole of China. He reinstated inspection tours into the south to show his presence to the people and also gain their trust and demonstrate his care for them. And on the right side, you see him sitting in a boat. When we look at the next slide, you see the emperor's arrival in Suzhou at Changmen Gate. You see him on the right in the boat, about to disembark and walk over the red carpet. And on the right side of the carpet, you see his horse. He would mount and then ride through the streets of Suzhou. And this is a detail from a long hand scroll or a set of hand scrolls, but a scroll that is in the collection of the Alberta University Art Museum from the McTaggart, originally from the McTaggart collection. And we are very fortunate to have this on loan. It's over 83 feet long. Jiangnan provided more than a third of the empire's tax revenue, and the Kangxi emperor knew that without the loyalty and trust and support of the people of this region, of the Jiangnan region, he would risk to lose the empire. And therefore, these emperors, Kangxi emperor and also his grandson Qianlong, undertook these southern inspection tour and promoted the region. The next slide, please. So here we have his grandson, a portrait of the Qianlong emperor in the Cleveland Museum. And the Qianlong emperor, would follow the Kangxi emperor's lead. He also, like the Kangxi emperor, undertook 6 inspection tours into the south. And in particular, the Qianlong emperor commissioned many works of art from the Jiangnan region and established a close relationship with craftsmen in this area. Such as, the next slide, please, he commissioned this red lacquer box, which is in the Cleveland Museum, to house his portrait. And we have found that he commissioned this from Suzhou workshops, from Suzhou located craftsmen in the 1780s. And by commissioning these artworks, he established, often through bannermen and other agents, sold merchants, a close relationship with the population in the Jiangnan region. Finally, next slide, please. We have a section on the craftsmanship and consumption of the Jiangnan region. The title is Made in and for Jiangnan, Consumption and Commerce. This presents artworks in whose production Jiangnan excelled. And I will pick only one group of material, which is 18th century large sheet color prints. If you want to study the best of 18th century Chinese color prints at the moment, you need to come to Cleveland. It is a material that has not been shown to the public before. And these prints were produced for local consumption in the Suzhou or Jiangnan Lower Yangzi Delta area, but also reached Europe in the 18th century and furnished palaces and castles in Europe as wallpaper. So this was imagery that shaped the idea of China in the 18th century. We have in this juxtaposed here in the exhibition a silk painting of the 18th century with two Mayren color prints, large sheet color prints, woodblock prints, to show how closely they imitate paintings. If you couldn't afford a silk painting of the type in the center, you would go for the woodblock color prints. But the comparison shows how closely they imitated the paintings. So these Gusu prints, as well as European etchings. Maybe we see the next slide, please. Yeah, here we have two other Gusu, Suzhou produced prints, large sheet prints on the left, Tiger Hill, and on the right, Putoshan, a pilgrimage site near Shanghai. Both of them could have well been produced for pilgrims or visitors, tourists of this area who could take this material home. Next slide, please. So these prints, as well as European etchings after Chinese prints of here pictures of tilling and weaving, the Gengzhe Tu, who also reached Europe. These were all images conceived and originating from Jiangnan. They contributed to the 18th century Western idea and conception of China as a model state and superior civil society. And with this Chinese imagery conceived in the Jiangnan region that reached Europe and how shaped the image of China in Europe in the 18th century, I would like to conclude my lecture and thank you for your attention. Next slide, please.
Clarissa, thank you very much for a very illuminating talk. It was marvelous to once again visit your terrific exhibition and to walk through the 6 different vehicles that you use to actually present this marvelous topic. We're going to ask for Q&A from the audience, but I have a couple of questions for you first. You have been quoted as saying, so much of what we associate with traditional China today, such as rice, silk, lacquer production, color printing, garden culture, and landscape paintings, either originated or flourished in the Jiangnan region. I understand that this exhibition is the result of over 8 years of planning. The Cleveland Museum of Art's rich collection forms such a large part of this groundbreaking exhibition. So tell us, how did it assist you in forming your concept of this, enormous exhibition? And can you actually talk with us about the process and challenges involved in mounting such an exhibition?
Well, the concept existed before I came to the Cleveland Museum because, it evolved from my time at the British Museum. But then, of course, the Cleveland Museum collection made the whole exhibition so much stronger because I could really use the richness of the collection to complement the exhibition, the objects in the exhibition. And indeed, a third of the objects in the exhibition are really from Cleveland, and make it a really strong exhibition. Another aspect is perhaps that the Cleveland Museum has a very long-standing relationship with, the lending institution like Tokyo National Museum, Nelson Atkins Museum, the Shanghai Museum, for decades, really. And this trust helped to securing important loans. And this, again, added to the importance of the loans and the strengths of the exhibition. But yeah, there were challenges, clearly. The pandemic was one challenge, because I could not travel to Asia. I could travel to Europe and America at some point in time, but for Asia, and I had to kind of remember what I saw in previous years before the pandemic, all of my travels, and I could also, of course, use my network of wonderful colleagues in Asia to ask them for advice and help with choosing objects. So that was in a way a challenge, but I had great help. And of course, another challenge is the sheer scope of the exhibition. This is enormous.
Absolutely.
And the quantity of the exhibits. So the professional high standards and the team members wouldn't change in the Cleveland Museum, whether you have a small or a bigger or a smaller exhibition. The high standards that the museum has and maintains remains the same, and therefore it becomes really an enormous work effort for to keep up the high standards and to work with a limited team of staff to set up this ambitious exhibition. Alone, if you imagine you write 50 labels or you write 100 labels, it's there's a big difference in and the person who has to edit it, who has to design it, and so on. So this was the scope was a challenge, the pandemic was a challenge, but on the other hand, Cleveland was fully behind the idea, and I got a lot of support from the museum, but as well as from everybody abroad who were involved in the project.
Well, the exhibition features, national treasures and masterpieces from China, as well as works of art from Europe, and many of these pieces are rarely shown due to their fragility and sensitivity to light.
Yeah.
So I understand that some are only on view for a short period of time and then are rotated with others. Is this correct?
Yes. Yes, that's right. We have to re-rotate some of them, but it is quite astonishing. One thing I can say, we have the Tokyo National Treasure, the Dream Journey through Xiaoqiang is just coming from on the 21st of November to the 18th of December. That's a limited time when this is on display. And this will be an absolute high point in the during the exhibition duration. On the other hand, I can say that Princeton Museum, Princeton Art University Museum was very generous in allowing the Wang Hong, the 12th century, the 8 views of Xiaoxiang to be shown, both scrolls in full exposure for the whole time of the exhibition. The same for the Nelson Atkins Museum. They allow us to show the 12th century Southern Song paintings, all three of them, Jiangshen, Ma Yuan, Xia Gui, for the full time duration of the exhibition. They will be on display for the whole time. The same with the Nizan painting will be. So there's enormous generosity and but also, of course, again, this is trust in a very good conservation, collaboration and conservation team we have at the museum, which is known. And so therefore, we were very fortunate to have this, very generous approach to how long we can exhibit works of art. And that's not only paintings. It includes, of course, light-sensitive material like lacquer, textiles, prints, and paintings. All of this material is light sensitive.
Yes.
But since we have 4 months, this is we met with a lot of generosity in being able to show it for the full time of the full duration of the exhibition.
I have a number of questions for you from the audience. One of them being, someone says, wonderful talk and congratulations on the show. If a distinction can be described, how would you characterize the aesthetics of Jiangsu artworks, particularly 3D works of art, as the paintings can be said to draw on the local landscape and atmosphere?
Well, with objects, I think they take on, as I showed with the silver set, they take on inspiration from the local flora and fauna. In this way, we can say, and motifs, let's say, like, plants, insects, as we see in landscape painting, the environment is taken as a source of inspiration and appears on as decoration on works of art. In that way, there is some absorption of, a reflection of the environment on works of art.
I think you've partially answered this already, but one person has asked, what contributed to such artistic devotion in this geographical region of China?
Well, devotion is, one thing I addressed is the migration, the immigration, then an enormous competition among, if you see, look at the cluster of cities. Where else in China do you have this cluster of cities like Suzhou, Hangzhou, Nanjing, Yangzhou, all competing for political but also economic dominance, and this breeds competition breeds excellency, and in that way, I think this stimulated the production. And then you have wealth. The wealth means you have major consumption in this area, and if you have major consumption, that attracts craftsmen and artists to the region, and they produce and have to compete with other workshops, and therefore need to be really excel. Otherwise, they will not survive in such a competitive environment.
Right. Someone else has asked, can you tell us more about the fashions and hairstyles depicted in the large format prints you display?
In the large format, the prints
that you've displayed.
Yeah. Yes. We know from written sources that Suzhou was a fashion hub, and really determined, women, what women would wear would determine, the fashion trends, trends. I'm not a fashion specialist. I couldn't, refer directly to what these women are wearing in the prints. But I would think that this material also helped, were depictions of women, and they would, show what the latest would be, the vehicles and means to show and demonstrate what the latest fashion in Suzhou was.
I see. Yes. Another question. How strong do you think the actual imperial patronage of Ming painters was? Or was it replaced by wealthy patrons such as Shang Yuanbian? Suzhou and Nanjing appeared to have a golden age of innovators during the 15th and 16th centuries. It seems to have been destroyed by the late Ming insurrections. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I do think that the literati elite was in many ways determining, yeah, dominating maybe or determining what was collected and what kind of schools and painting subjects and trends were favored. But yeah, and then, you know, in the Qing dynasty, then the emperor, the Qianlong emperor, for example, takes an enormous, is enormously involved in collecting and so on, and therefore takes enormous lead in what is collected and where the trends go. Whereas probably during the Ming dynasty, the literati elite in the Jiangnan region was very much a determining factor. What was collected and what the trends of paintings would, you know, the appreciation, what was appreciated among, because we have in the exhibition, we have these Zen paintings, you know, Yuan dynasty, Chan Buddhist paintings, which were all, which have not been collected in the, neither in the Lower Yangzi Delta nor anywhere else in the country, to an extent that they survived. So they are all survived in Japan. And we know so much more about this flourishing of the Zen Buddhist or Chan Buddhist painting through these remains from Japan.
Another person has asked, can you say something about the role of courtesan culture in the Jiangnan region in generating its special artistic character? Do any of the exhibits touch among this component of Jiangnan culture? I don't think this person's been to the exhibition yet.
I wish I could say more about this. I don't know. I don't think I can. I can specifically talk to this. There's so much more that this exhibit, you know, the exhibition is just giving some starting points to think about and shed some light on certain aspects, but it definitely has no claim to cover all aspects of the you know, history of the Jiangnan region and the cultural impact.
Seems to be a base, you know, each area can just, you know, grow on its own. I mean, you've basically given the key points of each of your topics. And the next question addresses that. Can you talk about your curatorial approach to the exhibition? Did the 6 sections develop organically as you researched it, or was there a particular object or objects that helped shape the exhibition? I think I asked you, I referred to this a little bit in my first question.
Yeah, I mean, it's I was interesting to, I mean, I thought that Jiangnan is so artistically and culturally so impactful, so important. So you have to build your argument, and you have to find the object that makes a statement you would like to make. Otherwise, maybe it's not true what you want, you know, what you see and think is. So therefore, in the exhibition, every object does contribute to or makes a statement about the Jiangnan region in the one or the other way. Otherwise, you know, it's a curatorial is in a way you have to think that every object is very expensive. You know, every object that comes in have to make a statement and have to contribute to the overall message. Otherwise, drop it, because it's too expensive for the institution to, you know, have it on loan. So that's definitely a consideration that is important. And, you know, to have, of course, a consistent narrative, not having bits and pieces to make sense. And in the case of the exhibition, of course, we have a chronological, we move forward in big chronological steps and look at the cultural history of this region.
Yes. So this is an interesting observation. It's a wonderful collection of items, beautifully presented. Thank you. I've never linked artwork inspired by the state of Chu, for example, with the Neolithic Liangzhi culture, much less with Wangxi. Can you help us understand a bit better how reflective the arts of each region, arts of each period, excuse me, as represented in the exhibition were of the history and previous cultures of the region? My understanding is that such connections were very limited, but perhaps not.
Well, Liangzhou culture is, you know, the Hemudu and Liangzhou culture are found in the Hangzhou Bay. So if you look at Neolithic times, you can, the simple statement that the exhibition makes is there is high culture in this region very early on. Right. And then with the Chu, the state of Chu, the connection is that the state of Chu, who was high Southern culture. We know all the wonderful lacquer and textiles from the Chu and bronzes, of course. And this state later on defeats the state of Wu and Yue. The state of Wu and Yue were kingdoms that are found in what we call today Jiangnan. And when the Chu state defeated them, it occupied it for over a century and clearly had major cultural influence on this region. And we can find this going, you know, it lives on. The Chu state culture lives on in this area, in this Jiangnan, in the Lower Yangzi Delta area. And the bronze bull is clearly the decoration. If you look at the patterns, you find them on Chu state lacquer, but it reappears in the Han Dynasty in Yangzhou, and that's because the Chu state once, I mean, in simplistic terms, because Chu defeated Wu and Yue and the Yangzhou area.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Question from me. Your research and expertise in the field of Chinese paintings, coupled with your exhibition on great objects during your time at the British Museum in Cologne, certainly equipped you to meld together and bring together both objects and paintings in this exhibition. Did your view of this topic and how to present it change through the course of your planning and execution of the exhibition? Or did you have, you know, your 6 topics together at the beginning? I guess this is, again, a question, you know, I'm asking you about your approach to the show.
Yeah. I have to say, while preparing, I learned a lot. One thing I did not pay attention to, and I think it's was, for example, metalware. I did not associate Jiangnan culture with the production of fine craftsmanship in metalwork. And I kind of found more and more looking where are the, you know, the silver and copper mines that can be found in Southeast China. And then the wonderful metalwork that, you know, like the bronze bull, like the silver set, also Tang Dynasty, of course, Yangzhou, all the mirrors that are in the exhibition, the mirror production in Yangzhou. I learned more and more that actually throughout centuries and throughout dynasties, the Southeast was very, very important in producing fine metalwork. And that's something for me that you know, I learned, and definitely I've woven it into the exhibition, into the you know, I've chosen intentionally or on purpose some, you know, metalwork, beautiful metalwork to make this point. That's something I completely learned. Or we made great discoveries in storage. I learned a lot about our own collection, like the Guqin instrument, which you know, where we all of a sudden discovered the signature and found out, well, Zheng Guixiu, one of the major Suzhou instrument makers, made this instrument in Suzhou. So, you know, it kind of helped us also to understand the collection better.
There's so many rooms where a visitor could just stay for hours. I know, particularly, you know, I look at the stone painting room and I could just sit there and, you know, live. It was wonderful. When you walk through the exhibition that you've seen and planned for so long, where do you still pause?
I find, for me, I mean, this exhibition is so wonderful when I see the juxtaposition. I could bring in, for example, the from Beijing Palace Museum, we could borrow this imperial jade cup from the Qing Dynasty jade cup, white jade cup, of which we have the twin version in the collection. And all of a sudden you have this juxtaposition of these cups, which are both so famous, and can make a comparison. I think that's an opportunity. This is probably a once in a lifetime opportunity, and it's so wonderful if it works out. The same for the you remember this. There's the beautiful carved lacquer box we have juxtaposed with the silver box from Anhui, where the pattern, if you look at the decorations, the pattern, it's so stunningly similar, and the whole aesthetic approach is similar. Of course, very different material. One is silver, one is lacquer, but the silver box definitely helps us dating with more confidence our lacquer box to the Yuan dynasty. So, and that juxtaposition is just wonderful to have in the exhibition. And this is where I spent some time, to look back and forth and try to learn more what the objects have to tell us.
Well, of course, we have the question of when will the catalog be available?
Yes, it's in print, and it will be. I hope it's December, where we will see the catalog on the market.
Okay. Well, it's, many of us say it's unfortunate that the exhibition isn't going to travel anywhere, but we understand the constraints involved in all of the loans that you have, so judiciously made possible, and the fact that the paintings are available for such a long period of time, which is incredible. I know that, there are other painting opportunities to see great paintings in the United States happening in November, like the paintings in San Francisco, the Mucci paintings that are going to be on view, and there are other incredible exhibitions going on. But I certainly would urge everyone, if they could possibly get a flight to Cleveland over the next 2 months, they have to see this exhibition. And we really, really appreciate the time and effort that you have made to give us this talk, and thank you so very much.
Well,
it's absolutely wonderful. I did want to say that we are that prior to Asia Week New York, which will be March 14th to the 22nd, we will be hosting 2 more webinars, one on December 13th and the other on January 20th. So for all of you who subscribe or visit our website, please mark your calendars for those dates. And we thank you all so very much for joining us. Thank you, Clarissa, very much.
Thank you.